Hello, everyone. My name is Vuth, and welcome to my midterm progress presentation for Research Project B, supervised by Ashley Dennis Henderson. My project is titled Sentiment Analysis of Narrative Tone Throughout Different Geographic Locations in Around the World in 80 Days. The study explores how natural language processing methods can help us understand how a story's emotional tone shifts as its settings moves around the world. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll take you through the motivation behind this work, the methods I'm developing, some early results, and what's next as the project progresses. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the Kana people, the traditional custodians of the land on which the University of Adelaide stands. I pay my respects to the elders, past and present, and recognize their enduring connection to the land, waters, and culture. Here's an overview of what I'll be covering in today's presentation. I'll start with a brief introduction and the motivation behind my project, why sentiment analysis is an interesting way to study narrative tone in literature. Then I'll move into some background on the novel and the broader context of natural language processing approaches to text analysis. After that, I'll explain my methodology, including the data pipeline and analytical techniques that I've been developing. I'll then share some early findings and preliminary insights from the analysis so far. And finally, I'll outline the next steps and goals for the remainder of the project. To start, this project uses sentiment analysis, which is a natural language processing technique that detects the emotional tone of written text. It can classify whether the tone is positive, neutral, or negative, and it's widely used in areas like product reviews, social media, and politics. In the context of literature, sentiment analysis helps us explore emotional arcs, how a narrator's tone rises and falls across a story. For this project, I'm applying it to Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days to examine how the story's emotional tone shifts as the setting moves from one geographic location to another. The motivation behind this project comes from the idea that literature doesn't just tell stories, it conveys emotion that changes with time and place. Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days is particularly suitable for this kind of analysis because its narrative literally travels the globe. Each major stop offers a different cultural and emotional context, which allows us to study how tone varies geographically. Despite a growing interest in computational literary analysis, few studies have focused on sentiment differences tied to location. So, this project aims to fill that gap by blending literary interpretation with quantitative NLP methods. To give a bit of background, this project builds on methods from natural language processing, or NLP for short, a field that allows computers to analyze and interpret human language. Common NLP techniques like tokenization, sentiment analysis, and text classification can reveal patterns that might not be obvious to human readers. When applied to literature, these methods help uncover recurring themes, shifts in tone, and emotional dynamics that evolve throughout a narrative. By quantifying aspects of storytelling, NLP provides a new data driven perspective on how authors convey emotion and meaning. The novel Around the World in 80 Days was written by Jules Verne in 1873 and tells the story of Phileas Fogg, who attempts to circumnavigate the globe in just 80 days. Because the novel's journey is chronological and location based, it offers a structured foundation for data analysis, almost like a built in experiment on emotional variation. Additionally, since the text is in the public domain, it's freely available for computational analysis and reproducibility using R. Here's an overview of my project workflow. I began by downloading the text of Around the World in 80 Days from Project Gutenberg, which provides open access literary data. I then pre-processed the text in R by removing punctuation, stop words, and irrelevant sections, and tokenize it into individual words. Next, I applied three sentiment lexicons: Affin, Bing, and NRC to detect the emotional polarity of each word. The results were aggregated by geographic location to capture how tone varies from place to place, and finally visualized to observe emerging patterns. In this project, I use three key sentiment lexicons to capture emotional tone from different perspectives. The first one, which is the NRC lexicon, is emotion based lexicon where it classifies words into categories like joy, fear, anger, etc. This allows for a deeper look at emotional nuance rather than just overall positivity or negativity. The next one is the Affin lexicon, which assigns each word a numeric score from -5 to pl- +5, representing sentiment intensity. This helps identify subtle emotional fluctuations, such as mildly positive or strongly negative tones. And finally, the Bing lexicon provides a simple binary classification, marking each word as either positive or negative. It's fast and effective for detecting broad mood shifts across the text. By combining these three approaches, I can cross validate sentiment scores, making the emotional analysis of the novel both more robust and reliable. Up to this point, my analysis has focused mainly on descriptive trends, how sentiment varies across locations and chapters. To move beyond that, I'm developing a controlled statistical model where tone is predicted by region and plot intensity. This approach helps control for the influence of the plot since emotional intensity might naturally rise during dramatic moments regardless of location. I'll be implementing this in R using linear regression through the LM function and the tidy models workflow. This sets up a foundation for more advanced modeling later on as well, such as interaction effects or machine learning methods. Before beginning sentiment analysis, I prep and structured the dataset from the public domain text of Around the World in 80 Days. After cleaning and tokenizing the text, I retain around 60,000 tokens across 37 chapters. I then link this to 10 major geographic locations mentioned in the story, from London and Sus to San Francisco and back. This dataset was then analyzed using three established lexicons: NRC, FN, and BIN, like I mentioned previously, creating a more robust foundation for the results that follow. And here are some of the visualization that I've gotten from a result. These figures show how the novel sentiment changes as the journey progresses. Using three lexicon, Fn, which is indicated by the blue line, Bin, indicated by the orange line, and NLC, indicated by the green line. Across all three, the tone is generally positive. The NLC line, which measures specific emotions, peaks around Calcutta, the highest point in the story, and again near San Francisco at around 0.24, and then Atlantic Liverpool at 0.2. Notice the pronounced dips at Bombay, where the mean sentiment briefly falls below zero, about negative 0.11 using Affin and negative 0.23 for Bing, and another drop near New York, where the NRC value softens to around 0.19. These fluctuations align closely with narrative tension, setbacks in Bombay, and the race against the time across America. The overall agreement among lexicons, despite their different scoring systems, confirm the robustness of the emotional trend captured across the regions. To quantify these observations, this table summarizes the mean sentiment and 95% confidence intervals for each major location. We can see that Calcutta's mean valence of 0.31 is the most positive in the novel, followed by San Francisco at 0.24 and Atlantic Liverpool at 0.20. In contrast, Bombay shows negative 0.11, representing the most negative regional tone, coinciding with conflict and obstacles in the plot. The relatively narrow confidence interval moves within plus or minus 0.08 to 0.10 suggests the sentiment estimates are stable and statistically reliable. Overall, these results reinforce that positive sentiment dominates the narrative, punctuated by short but significant emotional lows that mirror the novel's key dramatic points. This chart shows the emotional arc of Around the World in 80 days across its 37 chapters. We see a positive start, reflecting uh, Phileas Fogg's excitement as the journeys begin. Around chapter 15, there's a clear dip in sentiment, which aligns with the story's major challenges in India and the Pacific. After that, the tone steadily rises, showing growing optimism as the journey nears completion. The peak near chapter 35 marks Fogg's triumphant return to London. Overall, the patterns captures Verne's theme of resilience and adventure, showing how the narrative's emotional tone mirrors the highs and the lows of the voyage itself. Moving forward, I'll focus on expanding the analytical depth of this project. First, I'll plan to apply machine learning models such as BERT to improve sentiment detection. Then I'll conduct emotion specific analysis using NRC categories like joy and fear, develop an interactive map to visualize tone geographically. This it might take a bit longer time, but it's a challenge that a thing that I want to challenge myself. I want to see where, if we given the limited time that I have left, but I'm determined and I'm focused and passionate to try and complete and develop the interactive map to visualize the tone geographically. I'll also cross-validate results between lexicons to ensure consistency, and finally draft the outline for my 6,000 word report that is due in less than a month from now on to consolidate findings and reflections. And here's some other references that I've used for my whole presentation. And thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you learned something today, and yeah, have a nice day. See you next time. Bye bye.